Are my judges ready? Paul Schullery, an active hiker, fisher, and wildlife photographer, once said, "Calling fishing a hobby is like calling brain surgery a job." Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I'm going to be speaking to you about the boat I built and how it ties into fishing and whether it's a sport or a hobby. Fishing as a sport or a hobby. People debate about this. It can be considered a sport if you do the tournament fishing. Whenever you do your tournament fishing, there is a setback at first because you have to buy your tackle, your poles, and the boat. A boat can set you back as much as $35,000 more, but there's a way around it. If you have a friend that has the bass boat or the boat to enter the tournament, then you can pay the entry fee and bring your tackle. There's also many benefits of fishing. One, it's a great stress relief. You've had a frustrating day and nothing went right, go out there and fish. Don't worry about any of your problems, just go out there and be you. Also great social bonding. When I fish, I like to get a few of my buddies together. It can be David Hawking or Kenny Briscoe, and we'll go out there and we'll fish for hours and hours on end. Occasionally, we'll jump in the water and even throw rocks in the water. It's also relaxing. Whenever you've had a busy day, you can go out there, take your lawn chair and just sit. Sit out there and enjoy what you're doing. Also, health benefits. Believe it or not, when you fish, you use every muscle in your body from casting the pole to reeling in the fish. And it's a great source of food. When a lot of people fish, I know a majority of people like to use or do the catch and release. For me, when I fish, I like to keep the fish if it meets the legal limits, and I will flay it up later that evening and cook it. There's over 200 species of freshwater fish in Missouri alone. Just a few of them are bluegill. We have brook, brown, and rainbow trout, carp, largemouth and smallmouth bass. We have muskie, also known as musket lunge, and perch. That is your bluegill. They don't typically get very big, about a pound in size apiece. And they have the blue tint to them, which is why they're called bluegill. That is your rainbow trout. I can honestly say I have not seen a brook or a brown trout around here, only the rainbow trout. Those are your carp. They're just like catfish. They feed off the bottom. They can be anywhere from 50 to over 100 pounds. And they're also a very invasive species. That's your largemouth bass. The smallmouth bass is extremely similar to it besides the size. The smallmouth bass is about half the size than the largemouth. That is your musket lunge or muskie, whatever you prefer to call it. There's one fish that is extremely similar to that, and that's called a pickerel. We have the notorious amount of those around the house. They're also a very invasive species. That is your perch. Now, I can honestly say I have not seen a perch around where I live. Any small fish, game fish, we call it a perch, whether it's a bluegill, a sunfish, or a panfish. There's many methods of taking fish. For one, it's your fishing pole. It's just a fiberglass rod. It's got eyelets on it for your line to run through, and your reel. You can put anywhere from 5 pounds to over 100 pounds on this. You can set it up multiple different ways. For my type of fishing, I put a sinker on mine. Not only does it help the bait go lower into the water, but it'll keep you from reeling your lure and your bait up through the eyelets. Then you can set up a swivel on there. A swivel I prefer because you don't have to cut the line every time you change your weight or your hook. Then on my particular line, I have a Rebel Crick Hopper. These are extremely good for brushy areas, and that fin on it is for the faster you reel in, the deeper it will go. Then you have your truck line. Your trout line is just a regular piece of rope. You can either put buoys or jugs on each end. A typical one has 3 to 5 buoys on each end, and you put about 10 hooks down the line. Then you will set that line, the trout line, out in the water, and you'll typically check it every day or so to make sure you don't have multiple fish on there. And if you do have a fish on there, you need to take it off. Then you have your bank line. Your bank line is extremely similar to your trout line, besides the fact it's tied off at the bank. There's multiple ways you can tie it off. You can tie it off at the base of a tree, or you can even use the pole. If you use the pole, you need a 10-foot pole, put it 5 foot in the ground. That way, whenever you tie it off at the top, there's no amount of fish that's going to pull it out of the ground. Like I said, it's similar to the trout line because you also put 10 hooks down it. But on the other end of that bank line, you put a weight on it so it sinks to the bottom, and whatever fish comes along the bottom of that river will take it. Then you have your fishing boat. Your fishing bow is extremely similar to a normal bow, besides the attachment. On a typical fishing bow, you'll have your arrow holder and you'll have your reel with the jar with the line in it. Now, whenever you use the bow, you have to account for the refraction in the water, because the refraction makes the fish look higher and closer than what it actually is. So whenever you go to use it, you have to aim lower than what the fish actually appears to be. Now, whenever you pull this back and you fire the arrow, you must pull this brake whenever you go to reel in, because if you don't pull the brake, it cannot grab this line and reel it in like it needs to be. For my product, I built a 11.5-foot long boat by 2.5 foot wide. In the beginning, I had to make the jig. If I would not have had the jig, it would have been next to impossible to build the boat, because of the fact when you build a boat, you have to build it upside down. In order to do this, you got to space the jig evenly apart for your trusses or braces, whatever you prefer to call them. That way you can get everything perfectly on the bottom. If your bottom is off, most likely the rest of your boat is going to be off. Now, building Bluebird. For my technology, I was just going to buy a kit. When I found out the kit was going to cost me $1,200 to $1,400, I decided I'm just going to buy the plans. The plans costed me $35. Then for my supplies, I got lucky because my mentor had a lot of the supplies I could use. He had the pine wood that I could make the jig out of and the wild cherry to make the frame of my boat. I had to buy the plywood to cover the boat, the epoxy, the paint, a box of screws, rope. Then I had to have the tools. Now, my mentor, he was a great help in that as well, because he had a whole entire wood shop. He had every tool you could imagine, and I was able to use it whenever it needed be.
Okay. I got it. I got it. Oh, look at that!
There's nothing. Noah's maiden voyage.
I'd like to put a sign out there. Anywhere? Nope. That's the whole month of the day. Is it hard? You plan on putting a.
That video is proof that my boat floated. It did not take any water at all. Now, my challenges. One challenge is money. As you know, money grows on trees, right? Now, that's not how this stuff works. In order to have the money to do the stuff you need, you must have a job. Another challenge for me was patience. I'm not a very patient guy at all. Whenever I go to do stuff, I like to do it the quickest possible and get it done, get it over with. Don't have to worry about it again. Then time management. At the time of building my boat, I had 2 part-time jobs. So with working around my 2 part-time jobs and schooling, it made it very hard to work on my boat. Now that my boat is complete, I plan on using it a lot this summer. Hopefully I get to use it every weekend. And I plan on using it for fishing or even just floating. Thank you. Do my judges have any questions?
Are you going to use it in mostly ponds, or are you going to go down the rivers with it?
Mostly ponds, because I don't want to take the risk of bottoming it out and putting a hole in it. If you guys would like to see the boat, it is also outside.
How much did your boat weigh?
The boat approximately weighs about 250 to 300 pounds right now. That's without the motor.
So you need some help to
Yeah,
move it.
it was a task.
Have you had 2 people in your boat on
Uh,
water?
Yes, actually I did. Whenever I tested it, my girlfriend wanted to make sure it was going to float before she got in it, and then once she noticed it floated, she decided she'd get in with me. Any more questions?
Has it improved your fishing life?
Actually, I've only put it on the water the one time, and that was to test it. I haven't had much time to actually go out and fish in it just yet. Would you guys like to go and see the boat? Yes? Okay. If you would, follow me.